Hi all, it's Thursday again, and today's date is September the 20th. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. I hope you enjoy the show.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side, yeah. We chased our pleasures here, dug our treasures there. But can you still recall the time we cried? Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side.
Hi all, a slightly different start to this week's show, but with all the new listeners, those numbers are going through the roof and we're getting more and more attention and new members. I would like to welcome all the new listeners and the new members to our group, but what I will tell you about THI is this group will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. That's the difference about this group. Now, many of you will have been brought up on the RV, Nasara, Jessara, cryptocurrencies and blockchain, plus other promises of prosperity packages, the San Germain Trust, and I can tell you all now, none of them will be happening. None. The RV, the crypto and the blockchain was all designed to take your money on a promise you would get riches. No. The cabal got rich on it and you lost your money. Now, there may be a redemption program unveiled where you will get some of your money back. And I will repeat again, may. It's not a promise at this stage as we have far more pressing things to deal with, but it may be looked at a later date. For those that are thinking BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, is going to save them, think again. That was created by the Rockefeller and the Rothschilds when Putin was Pindar. He has since quit, which is why BRICS has kind of vanished since. Those that think there is an M1, most commonly known of that is Neil Keenan, that will release all the collateral accounts. First off, there are 74 people running around claiming that they are the M1. None will be releasing the collateral accounts, and neither will be Sino, Marcos or Sukarno either. The prosperity packages are not happening, and neither are the ET packages. But there will be a range of benefits that will come to every person going forward once the blocks are removed, and they will be removed. The San Germain Trust never existed, period. Kim has the list of all the 6,500 trusts that were merged into one trust now called the Manor World Holding Trust. None of them said San Germain. Now these funds that will be released, 50% to the countries for infrastructure, redevelopment, aid programs, and getting their people the basics in life. The other 50% will go to the people in various forms via projects and aid packages, via the People's Club, the Create Change with Tank, or other groups set up within all countries. The People's Club is the American version. It may well expand into other countries, but the people of those countries will run it. It won't be me. OIM will run a People's Club in Ireland once it all rolls out. The Trust is working on several aspects currently of how to improve life for all people on every single level of society. In all, there are 489 aspects of life that needs change. So I ask for some patience on these things as we are working as hard as we can to get the ball rolling, and don't need when is this or when is that happening questions. Quietly consider what you would really like to do going forward yourself. Document it for yourself, and when time is right, we can see if we can fit you in with what you would like to do in life going forward. The Trust will give us opportunities to progress forward, but we have to take that opportunity, not by replicating the current corporate system, but by being different. So no shareholders or middlemen creaming money out of the system and then leaving peanuts for wages at the staff level. If you set up your own company, do you need fancy lavish cars, first class air travel, all paid business expenses on expensive meals, or the pointless and expensive business conferences or excess salaries? The old system had them all, that only served themselves and failed the all. Are we going to replicate that? Well, I hope not. You take what you need, not what you greed. Has to be the way forward for us all. So if your desire is to be a millionaire or multi-millionaire, you are not thinking in the right way going forward. Millionaires means many have nothing. For every millionaire, there's 10,000 or tens of thousands with absolutely nothing. Please remember that going forward. The object is to share it all out for the benefit of all, not service to self. Remember, you are only important if you do important work, not because of the fake titles bestowed. Going forward, you will all have to learn you have been lied to all of your lives. You have all given your power away, and work on yourself to improve and then improve others. And we have to end the greed. Service to self, keeping up with the Joneses attitude, or where a Russian, Muslim, Iraqi or Syrian life is just as important as an American or British life. We have to create communities again and all chip in. We have to end the competitive mindset and into all for one and one for all. This nonsense of I have a better house, car, salary, shoes, phone or handbag is shallow thinking and also destructive. Not to mention, it comes at the cost of debt for the majority. I recently talked someone out of getting a top-of-the-range car recently, when his own worked fine. So he was about to buy a $50,000 plus car, not because he liked it, but because he wanted to show off to his friends and family. Essentially, that's rubbing their noses in it. Is this the way we should be? So 12 or 20 people go, ooh, that's a nice car, and then you're stuck paying $700 a month or more for the next 5 to 7 years, all to impress 12 to 20 people. Is it worth it? Well, think about it. The old system loved people doing that. It created more debt nails to hammer you into a cash empty coffin. Think and act different is the way forward, and this song says it all. Hi all, and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name is Thomas Williams, and I can't promise you the big hammers we've had recently, but we've got a number of interesting pointers in tonight's show. And maybe the first song and the last song may be an indication. There's a lot of things currently I can't say, because things are very, very sensitive at the moment. And the last thing I'm going to do is ruin operations or ruin meetings or ruin anything. So the information will be made available as soon as it's safe to do so. I suspect we won't wait till next Thursday before the next show. Again, I'm not going to promise that, but there's things that are ongoing currently that could warrant an extra show. So look forward to that. Right, let's get into the details of the show. And if you want to listen live, it's Spreaker.com/user/895-5881. Now, shows for the new listeners are generally at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time every Thursday, or Thursday as it's now known. And you can also listen live on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. Now, this is the website for THI in essence, and it's got all the archives of the past shows, including what is known as the must listen to. They're the biggest shows that we've done, and there's all articles on self-empowerment and grounding, how to protect yourself from psychic attacks and night terrors and all that stuff. And it's all being put together rather well by Michael Jacquin, who I forgot to give thanks to on the last show. So thanks to Michael. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and a Facebook alternative social media called MeWe, which is also called the Truth, Honour and Integrity, which people are having difficulty finding. And if you can't send an email, and the email for the show, which is for comments and questions for the show also, please do not send me proposals for the People's Club to this email. That goes, I'll give you the address for that shortly. And the email for the show is truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. If you're going to send proposals in for the foundation at the People's Club, that is at thepeoplesclub.org. If you want to help me on what I do, send donations to patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. Right, we'll go into the usual news and views. There's not as many this week because I've got a load of questions that I need to catch up on. And there's quite a number of pieces, op-ed pieces, and also little bits of intel here and there scattered, which will be after the next music break. Now, I pulled this piece up because this is going to be, I'm hoping, a blueprint going forward. And it involves a lady called Marcy Frost, who did not claim to have a college degree when she applied to lead the Californian Public Employees Retirement System in 2016. She did emphasise it in blue ink, writing "not degreed yet" in a box that asked her about her education. But 2 years after she got the job, she's now under fire, with a financial blogger alleging that she's mischaracterised her education in an application in a subsequent press release by implying she was further along obtaining a degree than she actually was. Now, it's raising questions among retirees who are learning for the first time that CalPERS, CalPERS, Chief Executive Officer, did not graduate from college. Now, Weber was reporting this year has already led CalPERS to oust a Chief Financial Officer, and she has dedicated readership among people who pay close attention to that particular fund. And they went on to say, "We are surprised you just assume in today's market you're going to be the CEO of the nation's largest retirement system, that you would have to have some kind of degree." This is according to Tim Behrens, president of the California State Retirees. I personally like the response of the CalPERS Board of Administration Vice President Rob Fechner. Quite frankly, it's not about a piece of paper, it's about somebody who can do a job. She presented herself as the best person who could do the job in that interview. And that is something that people need to take on board. It's just a piece of paper. It doesn't mean to say that they're any better than anybody else who hasn't got the paper. It just isn't. Use your intuition. You can generally tell whether people are going to be suitable for the job or not, far more than what is on a piece of paper. And most of it is faked anyway now. Reports has come out that won't surprise many, but it may surprise some. Israel is secretly supporting the Syrian rebels operating near its occupied Golan Heights territory. They are providing money, food, fuel and medical supplies, according to the fighters who claim to have received the aid. Now, Israel has previously treated wounded Syrian rebels in its hospitals, but interviews with rebels conducted suggest that Israel is directly supporting opponents of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the 6-year-long civil war. Now, Israel is opposed to the rule of Assad and his forces, and it also sees militants belonging to the Lebanese militia Hezbollah who support Assad's regime as posing a threat to its security on the Golan Heights border. Now, the payments are aimed at creating a buffer of friendly forces on the Golan Heights border to keep their foes at a distance. And it says that the Israeli military has direct communications with rebel commanders and is providing funds to them that pay for their salaries, ammunitions and also weapons. Now, these payments began in 2013 under the former Defence Minister Moshe Yaalon and continue to this day, according to this report. And one particular group that Israel is allegedly supporting is Fersan al-Julan, or Knights of the Golan, which has around 400 fighters, and it gives them $5,000 a month, and Israel's support ensures its existence, according to the group figures. Now, the group spokesman of the Knights of Golan says, "Israel stood by our side in an heroic way. We wouldn't have survived without Israel's assistance." And he said cooperation began when the group's wounded fighters began receiving care in the Israeli hospitals. That has to stop. Mr. Manafort in big trouble. Pleaded guilty on Friday in Washington D.C. courtroom to one count of participating in conspiracy against the United States, which involves money laundering, tax fraud, failing to file foreign bank accounts, and violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and lying and misrepresenting to the Department of Justice. Now, the second new count, conspiracy to obstruct justice, is tied to his efforts to guide witness testimony after he was indicted last year. He's also admitted guilt in 10 outstanding counts previously filed in the Eastern District of Virginia, including 3 counts of failing to file reports of foreign bank and financial accounts. These are the ones that we were talking about in the show 1 or 2 months back. He had all kinds of bank accounts in the Ukraine. 7 counts of bank fraud and also bank fraud conspiracy. Now, in July and August, Mr. Manafort stood trial on 18 counts, and he was convicted on 8 counts of tax fraud and bank fraud and failing to report the foreign bank accounts. But because of a single holdout juror, the jury hung on the other 10. Now, Andrew Wiseman, a senior deputy to Mr. Mueller, walked through the charges and the criminal information for about 25 minutes this week, and then Judge Amy Berman Jackson summoned Manafort to the podium. Is what the prosecutor said an accurate representation of events? Mr. Manafort replied, it is. And he then pleaded guilty. Under the plea with special counsel Robert Mueller's team, Manafort agreed to forfeit multiple bank accounts and his properties, including an apartment in Trump's Tower, and to cooperate with investigators, including participating in interviews, providing documents, and also testifying in court. He will be the first of many. Well, he's not the first, but there will be much more of his level going forward. Canada. Cannabis entrepreneurs are running into trouble, the entrepreneurs and also the investors, as they could face a lifetime ban from America over their involvement in the industry, according to a US media report this week. A senior US border official told the news that Canadians in the burgeoning sector could be deemed inadmissible to the United States. Now, Canada is a month away from becoming the first industrialized nation to legalize recreational cannabis use. While some states allow pot use, the drug remains federally illegal. Again, that has to change. You either legalize it, all of it, or you don't. Not half and half. It's okay in this state and not in the other. But there have been concerns within Canada's growing cannabis industry for months that they may face trouble crossing the border. And in July, a Vancouver businessman was banned from entering the United States for life because he had investments in US marijuana companies. And immigration lawyers have said they have heard similar stories from clients also in the industry. They have to sort that out. Oh, the irony of this next piece. Pope Francis has urged Mafia members to stop blaspheming against God and to embrace love and service. He was paying homage to Father Giuseppe Puglisi, who was shot dead by the Mafia in Sicily 25 years ago, and the Pope warns our brothers and sisters that they could not believe in God and be mafiosa. Really? I'll tell you why in a minute. A reference to the fact that many Mafia members are regular worshippers, and on Saturday morning the Pope addressed the faithful at Palermo's Piazza Europa and will later visit Puglisi's parish on the working class neighbourhood of Brancacasio. And the priest was renowned for working with young people to keep them away from the drugs and also the Mafia. And the Pope said Sicily needed men and women of love, not men and women of honour, referring to the code mobsters used to define themselves. The irony is, it was the Roman Catholic Church that created the Mafia. Oops. They are the military stroke drug running, trafficking, child slavery collectors, and have been for hundreds of years at the behest of the Roman Catholic Church. That's where the Vatican bank got all its money from, the Mafia. And here's Pope Francis now telling them to quit it, really. It won't be too long before him and his bank quits. Authorities in Brazil have seized more than $16 million worth of cash and luxury watches from a delegation accompanying Mr. Obiang, who's the Vice President of Equatorial Guinea. Reported this week, the 48-year-old, known for his lavish taste, is the son of the oil-rich Central African country's president. Now, Brazil limits people from entering the country with more than $2,400 in cash. Now, despite all the lavishness, 76% of Equatorial Guinea, 1.2 million population, live in poverty. No change there then. The president, Obiang, who is Africa's longest-serving leader, and his son have been accused of misusing the country's oil revenue. They both deny any wrongdoing, and human rights groups have also accused the president of systematic repression of opponents, and his 11-man entourage travelling on a government plane which landed in Viracopos International Airport in Sao Paulo on Friday. The police found $1.5 million in cash and watches worth an estimated $15 million in 2 bags. Why would you need $15 million worth of watches? This goes back to the opening piece. This type of collection of wealth, when you've got 76% of the people living in poverty, has to stop. It just has to. So anyway, they've confiscated, I believe they've confiscated it. Another one being arrested, the 2 sons of former Egyptian President Mr. Mubarak have been arrested for alleged stock market manipulation. Allah and Gamal Mubarak are accused of breaking stock market and central bank rules, and the case against which began against them in 2012 after their father was deposed the year before by the people. The pair have been out on bail for the past 3 years, and the brothers, who deny any wrongdoing, will be appearing in court next month. The Cairo court also ordered the arrest of 3 others, and the defendants collectively face charges of embezzling 2 billion Egyptian pound, which is roughly $115 million. And both Allah and Gamal are charged with embezzling at least 494 Egyptian pounds. And after they decided to sell the National Bank of Egypt for profit, which has left that bank bankrupt, like most others. Now, in May 2015, Allah and Gamal were sentenced alongside their father to 3 years in jail for embezzling at least 125 million Egyptian pounds from public money that was earmarked for maintaining presidential palaces. The sentences were already covered by the time that had already been served, but from what I gathered, they've been rearrested. Coca-Cola, best known for its caffeine-based drinks, the firm now appears to be experimenting with a different drug, cannabis. Really. The drink giant is in talks with local producer Aurora Cannabis about developing a marijuana-infused beverages. These would not aim to intoxicate consumers, but to relieve pain. Yeah, right. And the firm declined to comment, but said it was watching the cannabis drinks market closely. Along with many others in the beverage industry, we are closely watching the growth of non-psychoactive cannabidiol oil as an ingredient in functional wellness beverages around the world, according to Coca-Cola. So essentially, Coca-Cola have gone from putting cocaine in the original drinks, which is why they would never release the ingredients to anyone, it contained cocaine. And now they want to put cannabis in these drinks. And if people really think this is being done for beneficial purposes, they really need to think again. Now, given most sodas are drank by children, do you not think that this would create issues? Would the drinks only be sold in liquor stores or just on general sale? Now, for all the benefits of cannabis, there's also a number of issues surrounding it that we have covered previously in this show, but the biggest issue we face now is it causes people to go mellow. Do you not think they know that? And they are using it at a time to stifle public reactions. These people think ahead. So why the sudden urge to legalise cannabis after being fighting everyone for the last 40, 50 years? Well, the extra tax money is one thing, but stopping an angsty public is another. Think about it. Where are we next? Typhoon Mangkhut hit Hong Kong last weekend, and we'll see the differences between their reaction and Florence. But it has raised concerns over the city's long-term ability to withstand storms, which many fear will worsen with climate change, which is a load of nonsense. But there was wind speeds of 107 miles an hour and gusts of 138 miles an hour reported, and was far more powerful than Hurricane Florence that hit the United States last weekend. Now that's the Mangkhut storm is actually the world's strongest this year to date, tore into parts of the city's dense fabric, although there were no reported deaths in Hong Kong. None. But the typhoon did breach sea defences, flood buildings, particularly in the coastal areas, blew out windows, tore off roofs, down trees, and ominously swayed some of the high-rise apartment blocks. So what was Clinton News Network, CNN, response to this 107 mile an hour storm? They are asking that they should increase the category levels from 5 to 6 on the basis that storms will get worse this week. Really? Because I'm seeing Cat 4 portal people reporting it only being Cat 1 as forecast on MeWe last week, or a high-end tropical storm, which is what Florence was. But this time them and the insidious weather people have been caught out cheating and lying to the public. I'm sure you've all seen the videos by now where they're swaying like they're in a hurricane and people are walking past in shorts. But it's all to justify their catastrophic style predictions. The solution? Personally, I would put all weather people on TV in a wind tunnel, crank it up to 160 mile an hour winds and throw them all in and say, how's that for catastrophic? And then fill the tank 90% full of water and say, now that's really called flooding. Make them experience the fear that they're imposing on everybody else. These clowns are paid hundreds and odd thousands a year just to promote fear. Category 4, Category 4, Category 4. No, it wasn't. 90 mile an hour winds is not Category 4. This could be a positive story, but I'd like someone, if they have the time, and maybe I'll look into it a bit more if I get some time, but I've got a feeling we're going to be busy this week. But this sounds like something that may help many people, particularly in America, given about $3 trillion a year is spent on drugs and medical. But healthcare providers are now sick of price gouging and drug shortages. So as a means of taking on the pharmaceutical industry, hundreds of American hospitals and healthcare workers are creating their own not-for-profit drug company. Now the company is called Civica RX and is being officially launched to help patients by addressing shortages and the high prices of life-saving medications. Now, since the initiative was announced in January this year, more than 120 health organisations, which represents about a third of the nation's hospitals, have contacted Civica RX and expressed a commitment or interest in participating with the new company. Now, the 7 organisations currently acting as the governing members of the company, including Mayo Clinic, SSM Health, Intermountain Healthcare, represent about 500 American hospitals. The US Department of Veterans Affairs will also work in consultation with Civica RX to address its particular needs. Other health systems participating with the company will be announced later this year, we are told, and several major philanthropic organisations have also joined the collaboration as a means of further supporting and safeguarding the company's not-for-profit social welfare mission. Now, the company expects to have its first products on the market as early as next year. I hope that is what it, or does exactly what it says on the tin, as they say. This is a bit of a good news story. Like we keep saying on this show, it's all about the kids. But the question was asked on this piece, what happens when the world accomplishes 1 billion acts of peace in 10 days? Well, they decided they were going to find out thanks to a global experiment called #DoItForPeace. And on tomorrow, which is the International Day of Peace, 2 global non-profits, Kids for Peace and Peace One Day, joined by the Good News Network, will launch #DoItForPeace, a worldwide campaign to ignite 1 billion people to take action for peace. Now, they will begin lighting up the world on Peace Day when 1,000 igniters complete their act of peace, share it on social media and tagging it with #DoItForPeace, and then invite 5 friends to do the same. So by using simple math, at the end of 10 days, 1.2 billion, over 10% of the world's population, will have taken a stand for peace. And the 10-day initiative is led by 2 global non-profits with a combined 30 years of engagement in world-changing activism. Now, Kids for Peace, with its peace-building network of 10 million youths in 121 countries, developed a vision for #DoItForPeace and is the leading experiment. They are leading the experiment. Joining them will be Peace One Day, the organisation founded in 1998 by Jeremy Gilley, the British filmmaker who was the mastermind behind the United Nations unanimous decision to adopt the first ever annual day of global ceasefire and non-violence, which is now known as Peace Day, September the 21st. Now, several dynamic events will fuel a 10-day campaign, from the sea to the sky, and kids will form their own peace signs during launch events in the United States, the United Kingdom, Kenya, Pakistan, India and Australia to kick it all off. Now, the Guinness World Record holding skydivers will perform the first ever skydiving peace sign formation, and professional surfer Rob Mercado will host a peace sign on the waves. So we wish them good luck with that. IMF terrorist organisation chief Christine Lagarde, has been convicted this week in her role in a controversial €400 million payment to a businessman. French judges found Mr. Lagarde guilty of negligence for failing to challenge the state arbitration payout to the friend of former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. Now, the 60-year-old, following a week-long trial in Paris, was not given any sentence and will not be punished. Really? And the Court of Justice of the Republic, a special tribunal for ministers, could have given Ms. Lagarde up to 1 year in prison and a €13,000 fine. The ruling, however, risks triggering a new leadership crisis at the IMF after Ms. Lagarde's predecessor, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, resigned in 2011 over a sexual assault scandal. It's okay for some, isn't it? Do what they like and get away with it. The IMF won't be lasting in its current format for much longer. And if they keep sending armed thugs into places, one day those armed thugs will leave with no heads on their shoulders. Another good news, a number of deaths and attacks attributed to terrorism has significantly decreased in 2017, according to a new report by the State Department's Bureau of Counter-Terrorism and Countering Violent Extremism. Now, the total number of terrorist attacks worldwide decreased by 23% compared to the previous year, and the total deaths due to terrorist attacks decreased by 27%. So, the overall trend was largely due to dramatically fewer attacks and also deaths in Iraq, where the alleged US-led military coalition has helped eject ISIS from much of the country. Not quite. Last news piece before we go into a music break. Now, this is also part of an op-ed because it's getting beyond ridiculous, in my opinion, some of the things that are going on in the name of political correctness. The money that's being wasted on this and the resources are beyond a joke now. This time it's Sweden, and a Swedish university is investigating a professor for anti-feminism and transphobia after he said there are biological differences between men and women. Really. And he is being urged to retract his comments. The professor, Germund Heslow, who works at neurophysiology at Lund University, was accused by a student of making transphobic and anti-feminist statements in a lecture, but he has refused to back down. Now, during his course on heritage and environment at the leading academic institution, Mr. Heslow cited empirical research that supports the idea that there are differences between men and women which are biologically founded, and therefore genders cannot be regarded as social constructs alone. Now, the complainant suggested that Heslow's comments were at odds with the Swedish value base. Value base, that's more like, a bit like normal. Who decides what is normal? The government or us? Now, this value base is a concept that requires all schools in Sweden to adhere to common ethical policy, which includes uplifting values like egalitarianism, individual freedom and equality of the sexes. All sounds very good, except it's not, is it? And all this is as a Swedish church is currently pushing for a neutral gender to be applied to Jesus. Really? It's all Wells the Fargo to me. I saw it when I worked in social services briefly. Well, it wasn't briefly, it was about 6 years. And essentially what it is a bunch of stupid people with far too much time on their hands coming up with fancy words and descriptions like transphobic, asexual, metrosexual and other banal control system words under the banner of political correctness. I will tell you what is correct. A vagina equals a woman. A penis equals a man. It's just that simple. If a man wants to play with another man, fine. A woman wants to play with another woman, fine also. But why do you need a control system label to qualify what you do in your own homes or bedrooms? Put it this way, if I decided to place a camera in your bedrooms, most would rightly complain of an invasion of privacy. And yet there are people who are walking around telling the world what type of sex they prefer in their bedrooms. You can't have it both ways. And this labelling is costing an absolute fortune in both time and resources. You know, in social services, that's better. Money is better spent going on the children and the elderly. Not discussing what's politically correct or not. What you do in the privacy of your own homes is your own business. Unless you choose to video it for others to watch. Again, that's your choice. Labels are an external version of you. The real version is the internal version. And I hope people start remembering that. Who are you? Well, I am me. I'm not left or right politically, handed or brain hemisphere. I'm not defined by what job I do or what fake astrological sign I was born under. What sexuality I prefer is between me and those I choose to sleep with, and it's nobody's business, never mind what label. I'm not defined by religion, what country I was born in or currently reside in. I'm not defined by material wealth or my bank balance. I would sooner be defined by moral actions taken, being heart-centred, caring, sharing, compassionate and standing in defence of others who can't defend themselves. Put simply, I am. And that's all that matters. And ultimately, life is about what love you give, the love you receive, and the love you leave. Not bloody labels, for Christ's sake. Rant over. Well, we'll be mentioning this particular entity shortly in the intel pieces. Q mentioned a name for Hillary Clinton, and her code name is Alice, which is interesting, given that's the name of the psychotic AI that was removed a couple of years ago. So this song is all about Hillary, or Alice.
Sally called when she got the word. She said, I suppose you've heard.
What about us indeed? Well, Kim and the Trust are thinking only about us. And you'll hear some bits of it in these pieces for the rest of the show. There will be a Q&A because I've got to catch up. We didn't do any last week. But there will also be another piece on the Man of World Holding Trust near the end. So this intel that we've got there's not much tonight. I'm going to repeat what was said on Tuesday, but some will have missed it because they all look forward to the Thursday show. And there will be additional bits added on as it's been updated since Tuesday. Right, what was put out on Tuesday is Rothschilds have given up on the Asian faction now, which was pushing the RV. And I'm pleased to report many on the dark web that have been promoting the RV are now seeing through the lies and the illusion. So they're losing traction with that, which is a good thing. So the Rothschilds have now engaged the Nazi faction, which operates out of Langley. There's 3 different varieties of Langley, I might add. And some of those goons in NATO, which is Rothschild's private army. Now, the Nazi group has a membership which is known as AAIA. No, you won't find it on the internet. It's a private Nazi membership, and we have all the names. And it's 2.5 million strong. And they pay towards the Nazi agenda, including some in the alternative media. Yes, we all know who that is. Now, the Rothschilds want them to unleash global biowarfare to reduce the population by 90%. And they have 3 different modes or strains of delivery to accommodate the various human genetics involved. Each strain is expected, or was expected, to reduce 25% for each one, and the rest would die from a combination of all 3. Now, the leader of that task force is Bill Gates of Microsoft fame. Him and his genetic modification has killed thousands of children in both Africa and India with his so-called vaccination program, where the children are being rounded up by military and force vaccinated. It's time the authorities dragged him and his family in, like now. This is a national security threat for every country. Now, we have further intel on that, and what we found out is that they have been digging up regions where black plague bodies were buried to add to the genocide program. Now, thankfully, Trump actually listened for once and has now set up a biological warfare team in a direct response to the warning we gave out. Well, it's fairly simple. Arrest the Rothschilds and arrest Gates and his crew. End of problem. Rest assured, they will not succeed in fulfilling this program. Recent chemtrail activity has been minimal. Why? They've got no money. Also, I can announce that some of them chemtrails were vaccines against biological warfare. They were for our benefit. The explosions in various towns across the Northeast America, Boston, Philadelphia, were down to the Nazi faction causing disruption within the country. Investigations are still ongoing, and larger events have been blocked. I have no more to add to that from Tuesday. The RV failed last Saturday, it failed again on Monday, and failed again yesterday, and will always fail, period. The Treasury meeting that took place last Friday and rolled into Monday and is still ongoing. Around 10 insolvent banks were called to the Treasury including all the cabal-named banks. You know them all by now. And banks were told you only have one option, to restock and refloat your banks, because all of them are in negative equity, and that is to go with the Manafort Holding Trust. That came directly from the Treasury. They were also told to produce audit figures for a secondary meeting on Monday, and we expected chaos to ensue now that they are backed into a corner, and chaos has ensued. Now, on the Sunday, the banks did produce their figures, and all of it was lies and distortion and cooked books. The Treasury ran their own reports and found huge discrepancies, so now the Treasury are also aware of the systematic fraud and corruption ongoing in all the banks. The situation with the banks is the trust owns every single one of them. All of them were pledged to the trust. Now, unless those banks unblock the Manafort Holding Trust from delivering the funds to the people, all of your businesses, banks in every country will globally go bust. And we've asked for the Treasury to sack all the top CEOs of every bank. They're all involved in it. Some have already started, either in the individual banks or the central banks. We've requested a shutdown officially of the Fed and also the IRS, and a restructure or a delete accordingly. Now, what was suggested on Tuesday, it could well be a full nationalisation of all banks in all countries may well take place. Further discussions are ongoing, and it's going well. But the gist is, with the banks, they now have zero liquidity. But the banks are being threatened by the Rothschilds and their led companies. The banks, Rothschilds told the banks, all the big companies, ExxonMobil, Johnson & Johnson, Chevron, that are Rothschilds led, will pull out of every single bank if they accept the trust funds. Kim has counteracted that by telling the banks she will give them $10 for every dollar the clowns pull out of their banks. So there's a nice offer there on the table for all of you. We're not playing Rothschild's games anymore. So they think they can just create money out of thin air like in the past. But all money must have an allocation number, and the quantum system knows every single number and every single allocation of every US dollar and all other currencies. It's all mapped, and almost instantly recognises all the duplicates and rejects them. Trashed. Gone. Now, this prevents assets being duplicated and leveraged against. And with all the assets mapped and logged inside the system, which they're unable to gain access to, now there is no confusion or cheating anymore as to what is real or what is not. But as always, the clowns think they can buck the system. Not this one, you can't. As several failed hacking attempts, adding super notes, or printing currencies with duplicate allocation numbers have all attested. All of them failed, and that will always remain the case. Now, as for the banks, I know people are worried about their own accounts and pensions and whatnot. All of those will be protected. But the issue you face, and it is your responsibility, is if you're banking with Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, Morgan Chase, or JP Morgan, you're putting yourself at risk that you will not be able to attain your funds for a period of time that's undetermined. The same applies in the UK. Barclays, HSBC, they're all bankrupt, badly bankrupt as well. And unlike what was mentioned 10 years ago, too big to fail, that is no longer the case. If they fail to the 4 banks who have currently have project funds from the trust, if they fail to honour those funds, then those banks will be closed down. Period. Like I said, all your money will be protected, but you don't know how long it will take before the bank is either repurposed by nationalising or a takeover by the trust or something else, before you can regain access of your money. It's up to you what to do, but don't come crying to me or Kim if a bank suddenly closes. And like I said, I've been warning you for long enough. That's your responsibility, not ours. Put it in credit union, or at least take out a couple of weeks or a month's money. That should be able to cover you should your bank close down with no warning, because there won't be any warnings. They've got no money to pay the credit card debt. None. Now the trust is working with all the banks to refloat them and make a deal. But if they're going to sit there listening to Rothschilds, their businesses and their jobs are going to go bust. Now currently 19 billion of project funds is being held in abeyance by 4 banks at the request of the Rothschilds and the controlling elites, as Rothschilds make promise after promise to restock the banks with funds, except they or Chinese elders don't have anything to give or to offer. Nothing. Everything belongs to the trust, no matter who tells you different. The trust has made offers to all the banks, and yet still we wait. The funds that are in the banks have all been declared valid and legal by the Treasury Department, the Bank of International Settlements, the Department of Homeland Security, and other institutions. The FBI, the OCC, the DOJ and the DHS have all been into those 4 banks where the 19 billion is housed, and we still wait for real actions. They should have arrested them all. But the lack of actions coming from the government is a source of frustration at best at this point, and indicative on a larger scale. Banks, governments, institutions and accounts are all showing 0 or less now globally. You would think some would act by now. A case of Nero fiddling while Rome burned springs to mind. Now the message to Trump still stands. Act now and fast or face the consequences. I'm pleased that you initiated the biological warfare team, but we have other issues that need to be addressed, and quickly. Yes, we know you're under duress, but as you now are fully aware of what we've been telling you for the last 12 to 18 months, America is on the brink of financial assassination. That's what they always planned to do, going back 30 to 40 years ago. And yeah, here we are at the last hour waiting. So we need less Twitters telling us that Hillary, Obama, Comey, Mueller et al. Are crooked, as that's something we already knew. So you're not telling us anything new. And the point is, if they're that crooked, why haven't they been arrested yet? We're now 10 days away from a total government shutdown, as the budget is due again, and yet not one politician has even mentioned it yet. But good luck to getting funds out of the Rothschilds to keep you going. The trust gave you $700 billion in March and told you how to protect it. You didn't. You lost $400 billion to the SSP and the NATO goons. Thankfully, Kim is capable of doing her job, except she's doing far too much while you sit on your backsides writing Twitters. Now, Kim clawed all that money back into the trust, but rest assured she will not be providing funds for you to waste and fritter away again until real actions take place. Kim and the trust has given you a platform to re-energise not only this country into a better way for America, but all other nations. We gave you the Sovereignty Declaration 8 months ago, and yet none of it is being implemented. The question is, why? Kim and the Trust have done enough to provide real solutions for the path forward, giving you access to millions of hidden files showing the corruptions on all levels. That's the Fulcrum files. Worked with every single department within this country. Kim works 16 to 18 hours a day for zero pay, while all of you are sitting there doing nothing. Remember, all of you are only getting paid now because of the work Kim did in March with the budget. You're all getting paid because of Kim. Every one of you. Now's the time for you, Mr. Trump, the government, Q, the military, the Justice Department and the agencies to do your jobs, and actions must be taken. Start now, not tomorrow, or until the Rothschilds fail again, or wait until Friday when it all fails again, and on it goes. Actions have to be taken now. We have done our jobs. It's way past time you did yours. Force the banks to release the funds or we all go bust. It's not that difficult. It's a fairly simple choice actually once you put on some big pants and do the jobs you're all paid for. Now all of you in high level positions owe the people of this country and all other countries big time. And it's time the people got their payback. Now. Next piece. Mr. Munchkins, or Mnuchin, whatever his name is. It's easier to say Munchkins, isn't it? And his crew at the Treasury need to get moving and push things along quickly. Or maybe he's not batting for the right side. Time will tell. Now, the Treasury Department, as I said, has been pushing the four banks that currently hold the $19 billion on account for the last 3 weeks on releasing the funds. I'm pleased to say the four banks have now asked the agencies for an intelligence report on the Manafort Holding Trust on the validity of the funds. Oh, the irony. The banks who laundered billions of drug trafficking and slavery money asking for validity of the funds of the Manafort Holding Trust. Yeah. It's a bit like the Pope asking the Mafia to behave. Well, he did, didn't he? World's going mad, I tell you. Now, under normal circumstances, this is seen as a good sign that they're now asking for the intelligence reports that will approve it. Like I said, it's already been approved by the Treasury, the Bank of International Settlements, the Department of Justice, and also the Department of Homeland Security. But it could also be another delaying tactics. But if they delay much longer, those banks will cease to exist in its current format. They best not delay us too much longer. Like I said, remember, the trust owns all the banks. Next intel piece. Pressure is now being applied on getting Israel to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty on Nuclear Weapons. Of course, to date they have not signed it, and in part due to the fact that they've been selling American weapons, nuclear and non-nuclear, and trade secrets globally, including to China, and making a vast profit on it. What is also less known is the furore over Iran having nuclear weapons. Now, this is also ironic, since it was the Israelis who actually sold them the nuclear weapons to Iran in 1984. But you didn't know, too many didn't know that, did you? It's the old problem solution. We'll create the problem so we can give you the solution. We'll give you nuclear weapons. Iran goes, thank you very much. And then Israel spends the next 30 years going, oh, these Iranians are dangerous because they've got nuclear weapons. It's a bit like North Korea. Same thing happened there. A bit like Iraq also. British and American were giving Iraqis all the chemical weapons, funny enough, to fight Iran. Meanwhile, a lot of our money is wasted, and lives. Now, there's a lot of chatter about bonds, and we covered some of them in last week's show, and redeeming them globally, either for bank bailouts, cabal enrichment, or agency-related control systems. But what you may not know is all these bonds, or any bonds, can only be created during wartime. And as we were under martial law for the last 16,500 years, this is how they came into existence. Now, since 2016, when peace was declared and the peace treaty signed off and is now enforceable, these bonds are now only bank assets. So forget all the alt media talk of cashing them in for collateral accounts. It's more BS. Sorry. War bonds. This week, Kim spoke to the Zimbabwe president and has made him fully aware of the currency issue his country faces, with the clowns and the goons on the internet promoting Zims, Zimbabwe dollars or whatever it is. I promise you, when they change their currency, they will not 100% be using Zims. Right from the president's mouth. Zims will then have the same value as monopoly currency. Oops. I don't know when I should do this next piece. She'll probably kill me. But we should always have plans A, more than plan A. And Kim and I in the trust have multiple plans for multiple situations. That's how you stay ahead of the game. But thinking aloud and given some of the things that are being said behind the scenes, given how many people think poorly about Mr. Trump, now he kind of splits and divides opinion too much in many ways, which is why he was the candidate going against Hillary. Now, so much so, even if Trump did all the right things over the next coming days, would it still not be the case that many would reject it just because it's Trump? But what if Trump went down with all the other clowns for various indiscretions? What would happen next? Mike Pence? No. And so it got me thinking, maybe we should consider a temporary appointment at the top for the transition only, not a permanent position. And I know for 1 minute she won't thank me for suggesting this, but extraordinary measures, should it be required in extraordinary times, methinks, given that she has overhauled the whole banking system, completely rewrote it, declared sovereignty, collapsed the control system, and has extensive knowledge of global affairs and foreign affairs and war and who does it, what, when, where and why. Perhaps Kim should be installed as the head of the country for a short period of time, should it be necessary, as she would be someone most of the country would put support behind. I'm sorry, Kim. Well, hearing how the people in government operate and their lack of knowledge, I find astounding. But it would be the best solution of a temporary trust-acting government until the real American government is installed, not USA Inc., acting as the American government, with the organic constitution, the Bill of Rights restored, the American sovereignty, which would end the Fed, the IRS and the Crown interference, plus the bar lawyer system as we know it, and or repurpose it. I just think the public would respond better to her than Trump, in my opinion. She talks common sense, which, as we all know, is not common these days. Sorry, kid. When I hear what these clowns are, how these clowns think and act, oh boy, it terrifies you. You have no idea how stupid they are. No idea. Ignorant of knowledge of how a financial system works, how a government works, how anything works. You'd be astounded. So should the situation arise, maybe that's something we should all ponder. I'm going to get it in the neck tomorrow. I just know it. She's not going to like me for that. Yeah, she loves me anyway, so. So there's been a lot of talk about Mr. Kavanaugh. And some of you will have already seen this, but for the listeners, he's the pending new justice guy. And, of course, the Democrats and people are doing everything to block it. And up popped some lady this week making all kinds of allegations except it's been given we've got a load of QAnons now, which are people who are digging for information around the internet, and they're coming up with some good stuff. So Colleen Kelly Johnson and Martha G. Kavanaugh, who is the mother of Brett Kavanaugh, was a Maryland district judge back in 1996. And in an amazing coincidence, Martha Kavanaugh was the judge in a foreclosure case in which Christine Blasey Ford's parents were the defendants. Now it all becomes clear. Blasey Ford is going after Brett Kavanaugh not because of what he did in high school. Instead, Christine Blasey Ford is going after Brett Kavanaugh out of spite and revenge for a case ruled on by Brett Kavanaugh's mother, Martha Kavanaugh. Now, she was the Montgomery County Circuit Court judge from 1993 until she retired in 2001. And during a 1996 foreclosure case, Martha Kavanaugh ruled against the parents of Christine Blasey Ford in a foreclosure case. The foreclosure case against Paula K. Blasey and Ralph G. Blasey was opened on August the 8th, 1996. And the case number, for those of you who want to check into it, is 156006V. They all get found out now. Mainstream media, portal people, and their puppet operating clowns are now getting awfully edgy about social media, and in particular the alternative media. Sadly, most of the alternative media is corrupted also, as people have found out, and if you haven't, you will. And they've now decided to ban various groups and organisations. Ignore the Alex Jones one, that's all theatre and distraction. He was COINTELPRO all along. Bought and paid for by Stratfor, who have links to Israeli Mossad. But Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, all banning various groups, including Q, or some Q groups on Reddit, I think. Now, I know this is bothering most, but to me, is it not a sign we are winning as well? We'll always find other avenues to have and say our piece, no matter what they do. But from owning and controlling the world, they're now reduced to banning people on Facebook to keep an illusion of control going. You know, oh my, how the mighty have fallen. World control to banning people on Facebook for telling the truth. It's quite a steep fall. There's something else that needs to be acted upon. The California governor, Jerry Brownshirt, yeah, he's a Nazi, popped up on Portal People News this week saying Trump is sabotaging the world order. Yes, Jerry, because we don't want a Nazi-led world is why. And he went on to say something is going to happen to this guy because if we don't get rid of him, he will undermine America. So here you have it, a public guy on national TV that at best is threatening the president. And at worst, it could be he is insinuating that the president should be assassinated on national TV. And the authorities are doing what? Ignoring it. Sure, if you and I wrote on blogs, assassinate President Trump or assassinate this or assassinate that, we'd all get carted off to jail. And everyone ignores it. Maxine Waters was another one. And various others have all called for Trump to be removed at all costs. and the FBI and CIA and Department of Homeland Security and the other police are doing nothing? Why the double standards? Again, that has to stop. We're going to see a lot more of this political drama and all its narrative of he said, she said. And we all embrace it to a degree. But is it all valid in the overall scheme of things? By now, most of you realise the system is corrupt, and yet many pursue it like that is the only thing to talk about. Comey, McCabe, Mueller, Page, Strzok, Banner, Mattis, Flynn, Sessions, McCain and Ann. And the names just keep rolling. Now they all could be arrested tomorrow, but will it make a difference? Because I'm yet to hear the missing names who have created so much havoc in this country, who largely still remain off the radar, so to speak, like Bush, whole family, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Kissinger, Brzezinski's involvement before he died, Dulles, Soros, Rockefellers, Rothschilds. Why are all those names being ignored? For Comey and McCabe and Mueller. The point is, we already know all of these politicians are just puppets. All have partaken in corruption, fraud and various other crimes. So why do we focus on it or give it so much attention? Well, the answer is kind of different for each person depending on how they view themselves in life or how they mask themselves in life as well. And often the overreaction or focus is based on individual insecurities. People who are insecure within themselves often react worst to indiscretions of others, as this is like a safety mechanism of the self. Too few are able to self-process. Now the worst thing about being insecure within yourself is those people hate being fooled and so will react, and most times overreact when they are fooled by no names in society, and yet rarely react to being fooled by those around them. But the key aspect of this is we trusted them to look after us, and they let us down badly. That's the projection. But in reality, is it not more the case that we let ourselves down badly for A, thinking that they have an obligation to do so, and B, what happened to our own sense of personal responsibility, and C, who said we can't look after ourselves? Well, the system did, and we went along with it. So is it not the case that the angst at politicians is really a projection of the angst of ourselves? Now, recognising that as a fact is one thing, correcting it is another. Now, we won't correct it projecting at politicians when the answers lie within us. Only the people will make the changes, not politicians. Only the people will save us, not politicians, not ETs, not Jesus, not God, the people. So this is something that people who exhibit this behaviour in themselves need to look at their shadow and inner work, as that has far more value than any pieces of paper or bits of metal. No matter what society tries to convince you differently. Next op-ed piece. Much has been said and written about Q and QAnon. over this calendar year to date, and we've already covered it fairly extensively. But to me, it's reaching the end times. Why? Because sooner rather than later, something has to be delivered from that platform, or it will resemble another hopium forum. The reality is the only group that has done anything to date with real purpose is Kim and the Trust. Many of the items which have been verified, some still to come, but we're still waiting for others to do their jobs that they are paid to do. She and we delivered. Now it's your turn to get your big pants on and do your part. Now it's all very well of Q revealing documents. There's one thing, as most of them came from the Trust anyway. But I think by now people have had enough of documents to read and go, ooh, look, they are guilty. We already know that now. What we want is actions, not documents. The FISA documents won't reveal anything what most of us already know. It just won't. Like the JFK documents before it and this document before that. It's not telling us anything new. The only thing new that can happen is if you get off your backsides and go and arrest these people. You know, Anne's committed treason at least a dozen times. At least. And she's still walking around. Enough of the cryptic. Enough of the documents. Time for action, Q. Real action. Now, I sent this piece, two pieces in fact, like the ones we covered recently about certain people doing certain things around America and around the world, and we thought we'd highlight this one. And one of the members was at a Patriot rally this week demonstrating against the rollout of smart meters. One of the ladies was distributing a paper written by two Californian firemen who wished to remain anonymous, understandable, who stated that the Californian fire responded immediately to the car fire, CARR. Quite why they name certain fires by name is beyond me. And the first and largest fire near Reading, and could easily have put the fire out right away, except soon after they responded, the Forest Service arrived and demanded that they stood down and let the fire burn. They said they were unable to deploy their services until the fire reached the city of Reading, where CAL FIRE had jurisdiction. Beyond stupid. And they also said that they overheard a conversation at the Forest Service office that the fires were allowed to burn free. The second big fire, the Hirsch fire, was not fought until it got close to the Hearst property along the McLeod River. These firefighters asked to have their information disseminated to the public so the public would know what is going on over there. And a couple of people at the rally said the piles of white ash were indicative of direct energy weapons, and that direct energy weapons were also the cause of all the so-called spot fires that were popping up all over the place. It appears that the clowns are trying by hook or crook to run the rural people out of California. They're also employing scare tactics by evacuating thousands of people and putting thousands more on red alert. So we want to thank that member for alerting us of that news story, and I hope by us covering it we'll get more people comfortable to come forward and reveal what's really been going on over there. Now, the second piece she sent said, we have a good group of patriots here in Siskiyou, I hope I said that right, Siskiyou County, which is the northernmost county in California, who are dedicated to liberty. And they're now reporting they have a lawsuit before the Supreme Court to review their appeal to form a 51st state, which would be known as the state of Jefferson, and then the 23 counties in California who have signed on with us to succeed from California altogether, and we will be free of the Sacramento communist monster. So good luck with that also. Two more pieces before we go into a music break and Q&A. There's something that came up in the chats recently, last week I think it was, that gave me an idea. With all the concerns over Wi-Fi and G5, wouldn't it not be cool if we all people developed their latent abilities to tune into a frequency and create their own Wi-Fi? Call it MiFi. Now, this is not as far-fetched as it initially appears. You have the ability to harness the frequencies. Source energy is a frequency. If you pull it in and manifest it into something that is matter, can you not do the same with the frequencies? All of us have latent abilities, and it's wrapped up in the 95% so-called junk DNA. Now, those abilities get switched on as you become a more responsible and balanced person, and you rise up the mental planes on your own soul evolutionary path. We are capable of far much more than people ever realised. But whilst it may seem off the charts and off the wall, I do get that, it's not beyond our own possibilities either. It's just harnessing the frequency and tuning it into a different way. It's the same as telepathy. And many people have done telepathy without recognising it. How many people think of a person and then suddenly the phone goes and that person rings? That's you tapping in to the frequency. Not the phone. You. So what if we all managed to reach the mental planes and started switching on our abilities? We could create our own MiFi without the harmful frequencies. Something to ponder on anyway. I saw something in one of the chats again, and I thought I'd pass comment on it, and how people dream for this or wish for that. How about manifest it or create it, rather than dream or wishing? Wishing and hoping is all well and good, but manifesting or being the change, creating the change, is the way forward, is it not? Many dream of being in a different job, but how many actually take the steps to fulfill it? How many make a stringent effort towards their dream, and how many are waiting on others to give them their dream? It's a bit like waiting for the government to fix things for us. We've had an awful long wait for that, and a few disclosures and arrests will still not fix that problem. And what does fix it is concerted efforts on the part of many demanding the changes, or we will replace you with someone who will. Now, I'm pleased to say I've seen that movement is now rising quickly. But revealing a few documents and arresting some will only have benefits if we, not them, fill in the void created. It's quite clear now they have a steady stream of greedy, egotistical psychopaths to fill in the void, and it all rolls on. But this time we're going to have to do something and fill in the gaps with people who don't have those traits. Now, manifest abilities have increased over the last few years, and yet many still don't use it. Why? Because they don't believe in it. It's that simple. And yet billions around the world believe in a person that they've never met, or some god sitting on a cloud passing judgment. And all that is external belief systems, something outside of you, when your internal beliefs is what carries all the power and all the magic. It's where it comes from. It's not outside of you. Wishing and hoping is outside of you. Manifest and creating is inside. Now, manifest is not a magic wand, so don't expect results instantly. It doesn't work that way in general. It's a bit like growing a plant, really. You prepare the soil and the ingredients for growth, plant the seeds, water and nurture it until it blossoms. And as you can see from that analogy, it requires your heavy input into it if you want the plant to succeed. Sadly, Western societies now demand everything today or even yesterday, and largely with no input. It is that aspect that we have to change going forward. Use your abilities. All you have to do is believe. I was sent something in an email. It might be something that helps people. I'm not too sure. I've got my own methods of dealing with night crawlers and psychic attacks. But this was something new that maybe some people can look into and might actually help them. This particular email said they've got a blue UV flashlight that they carry around, and the light kills the life out of the negatives, and salt dissolves them, and sage seems to scare them away. So something people should look into. Right, we're going to have a music break and then we'll come back with Q&A and then the final piece tonight. Let's go with this. Hi all, and welcome back to the final hour of tonight's show. We're going to go into some Q&A and then have one final piece before we end. Where do we start? Someone who's concerned that there's so much hopeful feeling towards Trump and his administration, he's going to fix everything. And Americans crave a hero, and that kind of bothers this person. And she doesn't particularly think much of Trump as a person. And that's fair enough. Like I said, the guy splits people right down, and people either love him or they hate him. Well, her concern, or his concern, I can't remember who asked the question, apologies, is the war that's continuing and even accelerating. Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine, and many more. Now it seems Venezuela is in the crosshairs. I wonder how you and Kim are seeing all this warring. Well, it's not good, and it's nothing to do with the American government, and everything to do with the deep state and the clowns. You know, why are we still in Afghanistan? The world's greatest, bestest, you name it, military, and we're still in Afghanistan 17 years later. Since when has Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria or Ukraine attacked American or American soil? Never. So why are we attacking them? So the point is, we need to get rid of the deep state and their warmongering goons. And if Trump's the guy to do that, fine. If he's not, we get somebody else in that will. Their time is short. Relatively short anyway. Their funding is simply running out. Now, will some of that funding continue the wars out of the trust? No, it won't. There will be things put in place. Now, with the money and power in the US Treasury, now I wonder what they will do with it. Well, what they'll do with it is they will give it to the fund that has come into America, and all for projects. It's nothing to do with government money or anything like that. They have a certain budget to abide by. If they're going to waste it like last time, it'll be the last time. Maybe the last time was the last time. That's what I've been warning of. Because if certain conditions are not met, we're not giving them more funds that they can go and create war and kill people with, or allow the SSP and the NATO goons to steal it. So certain stipulations will be made with the funds, and once one or two of the clans go down, the millions will follow rather quickly. A lot of them have had enough, including politicians, to just too frightened to step forward. Something I'd like to ask the following question. I've noticed a few times the sun having a halo around it. What is that? Is it called a dog halo? Something like that. A sun dog halo. Yeah, it happens kind of rarely, and it's kind of a cool sight when it does happen. But it's nothing to be alarmed about. I've also noticed there are paths in the sky that look like dark, faded trails, and the chemtrail plane will be following the same path. I've witnessed this myself, where there's a dark line in the sky where the plane's going. I've yet to find out how they're able to do that, or who's doing it. Someone mentioned these are fractures in our atmosphere, and that is the main cause for the loud booms. No. The loud booms have a variety of reasons, but it's nothing to do with chemtrails. Do you stand by your call for oil to trade down to $25 a barrel? Yes. We haven't had chance to address the oil issue since, as we've been kind of busy with far bigger things. But eventually it will go down to $25 to $29 a barrel. That's all it's worth. In essence, it's worth jack shit. All it is bacteria poop. And yet we're fighting all these wars with billions and trillions of dollars over bacteria poop. And people wonder why the ETs think we're all childlike and stupid. So, you will see, once certain corrections are made, you will see it drop to $25 to $29 a barrel. You also said several banks would crash by now. Well, they did. Kim floated them to protect the people's money, but we won't be floating them forever. They may be floating out into space very soon. I'm trying to vet a new source. Can you verify the new charge that the Associate Justice of SCOTUS and Antonin Scalia had no autopsy because he had his throat slit by a 13-year-old boy that he was raping? I have no details on that. I can confirm there was no autopsy, but why, I don't know. You said there are 5 factions left and they are fighting one another. If one remains standing, are they going to try to still control over us again? Well, this is kind of a concern that I have raised about Trump and his Zionist leanings. Whether that remains the case going forward remains to be seen. Actions speak louder than words. I think that's been the message for the previous 2 hours of this show. So Trump has that faction leaning. I think it's quite clear within the policies, and also his son-in-law may be an issue for him, but that doesn't mean to say he's going to stick to that one faction. He may take the hero's role and work for the people's faction. It's down to him. He can take the glory because he will be seen as the one that did it, which appeals to his ego. The real work has been done long before Trump. But that's his choice. You know, if from the people's point of view, what's happening is that all 5 factions are fighting, and if it goes down to one, we still have one that we have to continue to force out, and then the people have the platform, and hopefully we will act in a better way than they did, because if we replicate it, we will fail. Thinking and acting differently. What's your opinion on the idea that there are more continents on Earth than the 7 we know of and live on? Yeah, there was one in the middle of the Pacific, and there was also the continent known as the Arya that went down off the northern coast of Russia 110,000 years ago, which history won't tell you. What is the percentage of awakened people now? No official figure. I would say we're beyond the tide has turned of 10 to 12%, which is why more and more people are joining this group and many other groups. I'm beginning to see lots of data and dots connected to the Pacer family. Do you know how they are connected with the ruling families? I'm sure I answered this question 3 weeks ago. I don't know that much about them. They're probably linked with the Rothschilds, given it's France. And yes, they were a rich bloodline family. Whether they're still playing games is not particularly relevant at this time, because they'll all go down. When we are able to start funding humanitarian projects, and if one of the projects requires working with existing companies or businesses, will there be a way we will know if these businesses are legitimate or ethical? Well, that's up to the individual companies to do their due diligence. You know, if we do things and run things by their model, we're gonna fail. They failed. Remember that. The only reason those businesses kept going is because of the trust funds that they were stealing. They've all failed. You know, look at the banking from a business aspect. They've got mainly 50 to 60 story buildings in the centre of most towns, plus all the other offices. Where's all the money coming to fund all those branches? So that's why they end up charging us 8 to 25% on credit cards. We're paying for it. Banking as a business, economic business, is just not viable, is it? With branches everywhere. It's not sustainable. And high-rise offices in most towns. So we have to do something different. You know, the People's Club. You can have a load of businesses under the People's Club banner of how to operate in a business where shareholders and middlemen are creaming all kinds of money out of the business and leaving nothing for the staff. You know, it's your staff that makes you the money, and people have forgotten that. So you look after your staff and make them part, like a cooperative, where they have a stake in that business. So the people that are the real shareholders are also the ones that work for you, or you work for them. So it's up to the staff worker to work harder. The company makes more profits, and they get the benefits from it. Not wasting 400 million on clowns sitting in offices, you know, playing with each other's bottoms and twiddling with pens. You know, how are you supposed to make money like that? Well, you don't. That's why they've all failed. So if we build up the People's Club model and you trade with businesses under the People's Club banner and they're operating in the right way, there's your role model. Do we really need to do business with cabal entities? Do we really need... Can we not create our own businesses that compete with them and shut them down? Where we sell organic fruit rather than GMO fruit. Once the funds come out, it's up to us how we choose to go about business. But you can never tell which people are legitimate or ethical. You just hope that perhaps in a decade's time, when there's a raft of People's Club businesses and when they're all operating in the right way, need, not greed, that they will be the ones you trade with. Are the Pleiadians on our side, and can they be trusted? If they offered me help, should I accept? They're no different to humans. Some are good, some are not. The idea that they're coming down to help us or save us, forget that. There's a lot of Pleiadian groups that have done some rather bad damage here, including Krober's Pleiadian group. You know, the Alcyons, they were the guardians of this planet a long time back and sold us out. They're from the Pleiadians. Sold us out for tech. Thankfully they're now fixing it. But you can't just broad sweep everything. Are all Draco bad? Not really. Apparently 60% of them now are tired of the warmongering back on their home planet. You see, people changing. It's not just here, you know. It's changing everywhere. But I wouldn't be relying on... The real Pleiadians are the ones with the red skin. They're the real Pleiadians. Bright red, tomato red, not Native American red. Is karma a lie? Do you want to test it? Go ahead. Go and test it. No. 2 days, it's probably about 10 days ago now, the Portal people in Holland talked for the very first time about that Holland finance and the support the terrorists in the Middle East. I was kind of surprised they actually discussed this. Normally the Portal people here will ignore this news completely. Is this one of the first starting signs of the external that the worldwide broadcasting to reveal the truth to the people is coming closer? Yeah, it's a steady creep, and it's happening in many countries. Does karma have anything to do with predictive programming, in the sense that it eliminates the guilt of, say, 9/11 because they told us subconsciously that they were going to do it beforehand? They may think so. These people are gods. They think they're above and beyond the law. Well, they're not. And they will find out. Or is it predictive programming to ensure the mass consciousness is prepped to accept the outcome that they want to achieve, and can we counter it? We already are, and already have. Like I said in the list of events, the first one, we're all still alive. At this point, we should have all been dead at least 6 years. They can talk about Agenda 21 and Agenda 30. They wanted us all dead before 2012. That's when their contract ran out with the Draco. They failed. Murder by calcification, Operation Disclosure. This article recommends EDTA, which is calcium disodium. And the Germans found out that EDTA removes all the lead from the body, blood, organs and brain. They also found out that other heavy metal poisons were also removed. Do you have any information about the use or effectiveness of EDTA? The fact that it was mentioned by the Germans makes me kind of concerned, given Operation Paperclip and Overcast and what their scientists were getting up to. But you never know. It may well work. I don't know whether it does or it doesn't. Sorry. When the Earth is in correct alignment and all the rods are in place, will this end the phenomena of hurricanes, typhoons as such? Yes. For two reasons. It will certainly drastically reduce it, because the oceans, because of the extreme temperatures in certain zones, it heats up the oceans in those equatorial regions. Well, if Africa's only having Mediterranean weather, then the hurricanes can only form, and the typhoons, same thing, in water temperatures of 80 degrees or above. Now, you can still have the tropical storms, but you certainly won't be having the category 3, 4 or 5 or 6 CNN that we've been experiencing. But the other thing is, again, people have forgotten. If you want hurricanes and typhoons and storms to reduce or go away, you have the ability to do so. It's all about intention. So once we get a lot of people on the planet all thinking in that manner, we don't want that hurricane, and we use our energy, PSI field energy combined, you can actually stop a hurricane. I've seen it happen. A lot of Christians are saying it's the end times. Is there any truth in this, or is it a load of bull made up by the church and the Jesuits? Yes, it's the end of the times for the clowns. And the clowns created the Christian movement. All religion was an experiment on the people. Sorry. The USAF is asking for a 25% increase in size to get ready for the next big war against Russia or China. I hope you're able to cut the funding to the crazy war machine. They won't be getting it to attack Russia and China. If the US go anywhere near China, we'll get obliterated into oblivion. They have weaponry way in advance of what we've got. And I hope we don't ever test it, because it'll get stopped anyway. There will not be World War III on this planet. Period. But if America or NATO ever attack Russia, oh boy. Technology way in advance, despite what the American military tells you. When will cannabis be legal in the UK? No idea. How much of mankind's historical record still exists, of what exists, and when might the people have access to them? All of it exists. When all the people will get access to it, I have no idea. It may become available in advanced schools or advanced learning. Maybe it's something that we might consider to do with the trust at a later time. But despite their burning certain books and certain libraries, they were all retained. And I'm hoping in my lifetime people get the same access as we have at the trust. For those of you talking about, I've covered this many times about psychic attacks. It's been done in previous shows, and also the night crawlers go on the ground and censoring and shielding documents and shield yourself up. In fact, people should do it as a regimen now. They are ramping up, and a number of members have been attacked. Why can't 15% of the population be hypnotised or mind controlled? Because there's 15% here that are different. Just different to everybody else. Maybe there's only 15% of real soul, organic soul people, and the other 85% may be synths, biobots, or walk-ins, empty, soulless vessel. That theory is yet to be fully proven, but it may explain why 15% cannot be hypnotised or mind controlled. Will we see the British elites fall from grace as they seem to be creaming everything off the people? That was the case. It hasn't been the case for the last 5 or 6 years. If you're talking about the British family, yes, they have a better lifestyle than everyone else, but they have certain engagements that are rather costly. That's beneficial to the country, and they're not being funded. They used to use their own money and money out of the trust, and the Rothschilds et al. Took the whole lot off them, and essentially they've got nothing left. Now, most people won't have any sympathy, and me either, too much. But I can assure you the Queen of England is helping we the people at this time. She's blocking, because she's a sovereign, she's blocking all the clowns' plans for RVs and oil currencies and and fake sovereignties and all this nonsense. And as a sovereign, she has the ability to do treaties, which they've asked her to do, many of them, and she won't do it. But they took everything off her. All that gold in the warehouse that you will have seen back in the UK about 5 or 6 years ago, all gone. All to keep the hierarchy, and she's not hierarchy, or the top-end hierarchy, despite what people think, in the game. The People's Club web page info regarding project proposals say the support is for the American people or for the assistance with financial debts. Can you please clarify if submissions from other countries will also be accepted in the first wave, and how will projects be prioritised? Essentially, the People's Club is about America. There will be others that are created. There will be some that are chosen out of the People's Club and THI who live and operate in different countries to set up their projects, and they will be funded. So, we've been talking about this a long time, and if people have their ideas, please don't be sending them to me. I can't cope with it, and neither can Michael. We're both busy. But once the funds are released, if you have them ready, then it may be the case that the People's Club will fund countries all over the world temporarily until we can get people started, or likes of OYM, who will be running a fund in Ireland when the funds get released, and we can grow from there. Maybe the people in Holland need to speak to Alistair. And talking of Alistair, on the website of Alistair, I saw an article in which a vast European tunnel network was mentioned. What can you say about that? Well, all I can say, there's more miles of tunnel below our feet than there are miles of roads on the surface, and some of them have been there tens of thousands of years. Our planet's sun and moon computer technology operated by beings operating in duality. Well, the moon was run as part of the Saturn matrix frequency relay, which has been shut down. I don't believe it's a natural object. I think it's been hollowed out, and I know there's entities on it. Some have been removed, some are okay, and some are neutral. But it was used as a platform against us, and I also don't believe for 1 minute that it's 250,000 miles away either. It looks to be somewhere in the region of 3,000 miles. Will the US ISIS false flag attack on Syria or the chemical weapons be allowed? No. But it doesn't stop the likes of Clinton News Network and Sky News and the BBC faking it, which is exactly what happened last time. It's all fake and theatre. And so I don't believe that will go ahead. If it is allowed, will it be considered an act of war by the Universal Peace Treaty? Yes, it is, and be punished as such. We're waiting on actions to be fulfilled on that, but once it starts, that will have a snowball effect as well. It just needs a few people with a bit of courage here and there. What names did the Universal Council call our Earth School, with the first thought of the day being for our future? It doesn't seem appropriate that the younger generation can come up with a different name than the older names like Midgard. That's the name of the planet. Midgard. A planet, or Earth, is the real name for a planet that's habitated. And yet it's called Earth and Gaia and all kinds of others. The real name is Midgard. Now, from the Universal Council point of view, the planet is also known as Sol 3. So it's this particular Sol means sun, and the third planet along for this system. So that's like the code term for Midgard. I thought I refused. Some people, some of the questions. No, I'll leave that one. This one's not much better. Has the quantum system been created with extraterrestrial help, given the technology is so advanced? Would it benefit you if I told you the answer? Would it make it a risk if I did answer it? And what makes you think that ET technology is more advanced than we the people? Some questions need to be thought over of what we're doing at the moment. And I've asked those questions back for a reason. People often think that because something is so advanced that it's always from somewhere else. We're far more advanced than you realise. Not all the free energy and all the other stuff came from ETs. Most of it came from us. This is why we kind of have been sought out in the human slavery and the harvesting program, where humans have been sent elsewhere because of our creativity. So, something to ponder on. I'm getting the sense that the Western cabal is slowly but surely setting up cryptocurrencies to replace money as we know it. There is no Western cabal. That's an illusion. The goons in the East are as bad, if not worse. It's a global thing. That's the divide and conquer. West is better than the East, East is better than the West, etc., etc. It's the same people. The ones that have ran the financial system in the West for the last 100 years under the 100-year contract, which ended in September 2013, or September to December 2013, the Federal Reserve, which was then going to become the Eastern Federal Reserve. They already built a building in Beijing to harness it. It's not happening. Because the funds don't belong to them. It belongs to everybody. This is what happened over the last 40 years when they knew the Western Federal Reserve was going to end its contract, and then the money system was being transferred to the East for the next 100 years to carry on the same game. Except some people decided that's not happening. Setting up cryptocurrencies to replace money, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Cryptocurrencies, I don't care who I upset. In essence, it's like getting the little plastic chips out of Vegas. You give real money and you get tokens. And then they decide one day, when they've collected enough money off you, that those tokens are not worth anything. A bit like the Zim notes and the dinar notes. Fresh air tokens, and people are buying them thinking they're going to get rich. Well, some people have at the initial onset when all the advertising is done, so they collect lots of cash, and then what happens to it? Like what happened with Bitcoin. Crash. It's the same scam over and over and over again, and yet people keep falling for it. While the Man of World Trust has taken the true reins with integrity, the slithering bad guys are creating a false foundationless system that they can control. No, they can't. Eventually, now the banks are getting hurt by the cryptocurrencies. Why do you think all the top bankers are saying you'll have to do something with these cryptos? It's, and it's passed off on the internet like, look, it's going against the cabal system. No, they do that on purpose to pull you in. It's like the fishing line technique. You don't see the hook until the end. And the last thing that the trust or those that work with the trust will agree to is a cashless society. Ever. Because without access to your funds, the system then decides who has it and who doesn't. With cash, people can always go and work for a cash job, and it keeps them going. With everything on a crypto or on some Chinese, Beijing, Hong Kong, Singapore server, which if it goes crash, you've lost all your cryptos, whatever they are. People have to think better than they have. We all have fell for get rich quick schemes. The only ones that get rich quick is the cabal. They know how it works because they're controlling the game. We're not. We're chasing the illusion that we're going to get money, free money for this and extra money for that. Prosperity packages, Nasara, you name it. San Germain trusts. It's all an illusion. While they carry on collecting off you. We have to be better than that. How are we doing for time? 20 minutes. When you say so strongly that the plan to genocide the planet with bioweapons will fail, is that because we are getting help from powers beyond the capacity of the Rothschilds, Nazis, SSP, as in other dimensional beings like those who cleaned up Fukushima and cleaned up the oceans? Partially. We have a lot of people who can do a lot of extraordinary things on this planet. Like again, people always assume that it's others, when it's actually us. But yes, there was internal help, not other dimensional help, internal help with Fukushima and Chernobyl, including Levashov. Chernobyl would have been a lot worse if Levashov wasn't around at the time. That's humans using their own abilities to counteract certain situations. Is Pence the equivalent of LBJ to JFK? Is he a deep state plant? Last throw of the dice? Potentially. We'll see how they all fly sooner rather than later. Wondering if the East Gate was currently on the left or right side, and if so, for how long. I gave you the example. It's your choice to work it out. I can only guide. I can't walk that path for you. Would you know why all the observatories are closing down? It was a run-of-the-mill incident. I don't know, well, particularly the one in New Mexico was anyway. And it has nothing to do with that woman's photo on the internet. That was lens issues being made to look out like something else. Is the current hurricane result of weather manipulation? Well, there was a storm. Was it as bad as they made it out? No. Did it come in like we forecasted it would, a low category 1 or a high tropical storm? Yes, it did. And if more people had interacted with it to dampen it, then it would have been a middle tropical storm or a tropical depression. So people should act more. So when will we be able to take this ability away from them manipulating weather? Well, that's up to us. We all have that ability, if you believe. Any comments on Benjamin Fulton's latest post? Nope, didn't see it. Don't read it. You gave us info regarding a number of things that must occur before. Where are we on the list of things that must take place? I'm not too sure about that question. Maybe it has to be a bit more detailed of what the list and what must take place. Sorry. These are all duplicates. Oh, this one isn't. When was the Universal Council planning to erase humans? They weren't. The universe itself was, not the council. Was 9/11 and the invasion of Afghanistan the last straw, or was it to be around 2012? Well, they had a contract, the clowns with the Draco, to eliminate us 90%. The other thing about erasing humans was because it was put forward that we had kind of wrecked this planet many times before, and we were to be given no more chances. This was the sixth loop, and we haven't done anything or evolved sufficiently. Well, you're not when people are arsing around with genetics. Dark forces are coming in with people against people with no understanding of their own magic or their own power, taking them on. That has changed, and we've now got two human representatives on the council. The first one was the first time, which was Kim. It was the first time in recorded history. So now we have people who are interested in the human form and our development. We put forward the case of the interference, and we are given an opportunity to for this to be a human planet. Others felt it was belonged to them, but we got given a choice, and it's up to us to make a better world. And it's that simple. But this planet at one point was going to get erased. So the Earth had a chance to regrow, and everything all grows back. So all the damage that we and others have done would be corrected. So it's like a planetary reset. This is our last chance. You know, I will make excuses for the previous 5 loops, but we've got no excuse with this one whatsoever. Can you confirm the following? Colonel David Weir, USAF pilot on Zeta Reticuli, who are the main reason people see UFOs. No, they're not. A lot of people are involved in a hybridization program. Yes, they have. And a joint program between the Zeta Reticulans and humans. Now, most of that was being done by the tall greys and the tall whites. and it wasn't here to develop a better body to house our souls in future incarnations, period. I'm sorry, that's the lie. Several military officers committed suicide because they couldn't accept what they witnessed in this program. If true, has this program been stopped? Well, it should have done. And if it gets found out, then the council will deal with the factions that are involved in that. Because one of the conditions is we're not to be meddled with in any shape or form. This is why the abductions have dropped off to near zero. Hardly anyone mentions it anymore. This is also why people are seeing less objects in the sky. Why? Because they're all underground. And a lot of those objects were SSP, not ETs. And their ability to do things has been severely hampered. And if they continue to play games in their levels that they're accessible 1 to 6, they will face the same consequences they did a week last Friday. You were warned. Final question. I think I've already answered that. Yeah, I have. Right, that's the final question. I'm going to go into an end piece that is not as rip-roaring as some of the others. But it's something I felt needs to be covered. As yet again, a certain few spend more time finding faults and being critical than actually helping or saving anything. So there are some in the alternative community who have suggested that I've gone off track with all the focus about the money and the finance and the trust, and I have forgotten my purpose here, and I have become distorted according to these people. Well, people are entitled to have their opinions, but I'm also entitled to just disagree also. Clearly they are focusing on one aspect of the show only and are only looking for faults, and that's okay, as often those faults are in the mirror and is reflective of those who delivered the judgment. Now, I've made it clear what I think should happen with the trust. You know, money is a control system at the end of the day, and it has to be used in a better way, so I don't feel I need to explain that again. But perhaps we have to address the psychological aspect of it again, and what the trust is all about, and why what has been done, what we are doing, and what we can do. Now, in the past, the trust was used and controlled by Marduk and the bloodline families, and at a later date, corporations, foundations, and banking empires. Now, all promised at various stages that the funds would be used for humanitarian programs, but they never did. And yes, since they lost control of it all, you have these families that are now coming out the woodwork saying they want to do this and that for humanity, like Foster and Gamble, like Jared Rand, and like some of the lower end Rothschilds. That, yes, you, David, when your family has done nothing but rape, pillage and kill for the last 500 years. Since the Chinese Dragon Group, who's one of the trustees of the trust at the time, gave the Rothschilds a $20 million loan, which they never repaid. In fact, they never repaid anything. Bezos and Elon Musk are the latest publicity stunt people. The point is, none of them delivered it. Why? Because it was never their intention to do so, is why. All of them fake, phony, snake oil salesmen wanting another piece of the pie that they've already swallowed, but for the last few crumbs. They used the trust to build empires of control, bought up every patent, idea and innovation, stifled creativity, entrepreneurism, and controlled not only the flow of the money, but who had it and who didn't? Who lived and who died? Which was the latest country to overthrow, bomb, or wipe off the map? And the trust had slush funds for assassination programs, slush funds to dictate policies, to manufacture smear campaigns, you name it. All of it came out of the various trusts and why life, society and conditions are what they are today. Every piece of land, resources, corporation, banks, military, weapons, manufacturers and governments were designed to abide by the rules of the trust and the whole control system. All of it was built in part or in whole by the trust itself under the previous regime. So it does not make sense, does it not make sense, that we have to collapse that whole infrastructure first? All of those I've just mentioned are all owned by the trust and Kim, and she intends to retain it back to the country and the people it was stolen from. It might be fine to some, dancing around in the woods, singing Kumbaya, smoking pot, all peace and love, while selling trinkets like organ, crystals, rocks and meditation tools, but they will not save the world from destruction. If it did, it would have worked at its peak in the late 60s and early 70s. Clearly it never, and it went worse after that. What it required was hard, in-your-face actions. So after merging the 6,500 trusts globally into one, what Kim and the trust has done has removed or dampened their ability to manipulate life and society. End the greed merchants whose lust for power and control has no limits. Stall and then stop clowns playing full-scale war games which would have incorporated Agenda 21. Eliminated many of the back doors into people's accounts, eliminated many of the clearance accounts that the banks had, essentially ended the Federal Reserve from its ability to steal from every American, including the government, and also in other countries. It shut down the criminality within the UN, who are not peacekeepers in any way, shape or form, but operating in child trafficking, disease making and creating treaties when they were sovereign, except they're not no more, because Kim removed it. The UN's role was involved in keeping every country's in-ground resources for the future for them, meaning every country would turn into third world status while they spent the loot on world domination and eliminating 90% of us. All programs require money, so cutting off their money supply has had enormous benefits for us all. By stifling the control of money and eliminating all of their slush funds, their genocide program has been stalled considerably, which then allows us to build our own platform, our own alliances, humanitarian projects and abilities to flourish and create a better world. So in essence, the trust was used against us to harvest our life force, create slaves of us all, and weaken our resolve and force us into a competitive, comparative mindset where we all ended up fighting each other. All of that has been stalled or stopped by the trust. But we still have much to do. But to answer the first complaint, that I've lost my way, if some don't think changing those conditions are important, then perhaps it's not me who's lost the way, is it? This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now. Change the opening from I'm to we, and you'll realise why I played this now. Bye for now.